Welcome back to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders. We're your hosts, Dion Watson and Angela Davies, and we're going to take you back under the barrier tape.
This week we are joined by extra special guest Julie Bramble. Welcome, Julie.
Hello.
Hiya. So we're really excited to have Julie here today. We have known her for a lot of years now, probably about, since 2014, 10, 11 years. And we've worked, I think so. And we've worked together in a number of contexts. And Julie's got an amazing and varied background and a very long career in the death industry. So we knew she'd just be an amazing guest for this podcast. So to kick things off, Julie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
Good morning. I certainly can. It's a little bit of a varied background and I'll try and keep it short. I've been a practitioner probably for most of my life. I've only just come into academia in the last 3. So my first job started at a very young age of 15. I decided I wanted to be an embalmer.
Wow, at 15?
15!
Yes.
That's really quite a young age to join the death industry. What made you want to take that path?
We did those aptitude tests at school where you tick like lots of boxes. You probably don't do them so much now, but basically you ticked a lot of boxes and it gave you sort of, this is what you would fit into. And it was like funeral director, pathology, or crimes investigator. And I was like,
oh wow,
really?
I want to see that aptitude test, Julie.
What were the
Recognise
questions?
that.
Right? No idea. Pathology was like medical school, university, and I was like, that's, really not for me. Not sure I wanted to be a funeral director, like front facing. And crimes investigator, I was like, oh yeah, definitely. But you had to go in as a police officer when I was young, and I was like, again, that's not happening. And then when I started looking into the funeral industry, it came up like as embalmer, and I was like, kind of links in with everything else, and that's kind of what I ended up doing. And back then, I literally picked up the yellow pages, opened it up and wrote to every funeral directors asking for a volunteer or work experience.
Amazing. And did you take it you got some?
I certainly did. There was about only 2 people that responded, and I ended up working at a local little independent funeral directors in Folkestone. They offered me 2 weeks and I ended up staying for 6. They couldn't get rid of me.
Wow.
I'm not going anywhere. So I think 2 things. One, for those that don't know, will you explain a little bit about what an embalmer is? And 2, were you a morbid 15-year-old?
Yeah.
No, I was actually quite shy. If you speak to my parents or anybody that knew me, I was like woefully shy. Yeah,
really?
Ironically enough. Yeah.
I can't imagine that now.
No, me neither.
Everybody says exactly the same. But yeah, so basically I would prepare the deceased ready for viewing in the chapel of rest. So yeah, that was my first like real full-time job. And I was really lucky that I got a YTS training scheme, because there's not college. You can't go to college for that. There's oh no, it's not something we offer. It all has to be done in-house. So Folkestone were really good, and I ended up going back to them like so much during my training, and they kind of gave me my first foothold really. So I'm always ever so grateful to them.
And where did you do your training?
So I did my training at a funeral directors in Margate. So there was a tutor who had a funeral home in Margate. And I went and did my training there, and it was like a sort of like a day release. But I had to find a placement before I could get the training, and I couldn't do the training without the placement. So it was one of those real catch-22 moments. And then a big corporate company offered me like a year contract, and I worked out of Whitstable. So I've worked in lots of places, worked out of Whitstable for the year and had day release to Margate once a week. And that's how I ended up doing my training.
Oh, all by the coast though.
Yes, yeah, I know. Yeah, really
not that
nice.
You see much of it down in your embalming dungeon.
No.
And so what was it that you enjoyed about it that made you really want to, after that 6 weeks placement? that made you want to pursue it?
It was so rewarding. So when the deceased came into the chapels initially, before that we worked on them, there was no way that some of them could be viewed by their families and their loved ones. And that embalming process made such a difference to people. And I guess kind of when you look at my career, all my life, I've helped people in some way. And I think I have that nature, and it sort of had a very big impact on me. But also the people that I worked with, they were all, I mean, we all have a bit of a dark sense of humor in the industry anyway.
A little
bit. But we were just like this little connected family, and that's what I really loved about it. And obviously back then, and that was like because I'm a little bit old, in 1996, so 95, 96. And obviously it wasn't so much female dominated as it is now. So it was very male dominated, and it was actually sort of quite a difficult industry to get into back then.
It shows your tenacity and determination, really, to get in, right into every funeral director, and I'm coming in whether you like it or not.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So I did that for 16 years. Yeah.
That's a long time. Did you enjoy it? Is that the right word?
I did.
Enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah. I like I say, because it was so rewarding. And don't get me wrong, there were some cases that that are going to affect you naturally, depending on where you are in your walk of life. But the outcomes and sometimes the cards that you receive from the families to basically say, like, you made the experience so much better for us. It was a very traumatic loss. However, being able to come into the chapel of rest and visit them looking so peaceful made a huge impact in the process.
That must feel so rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Would you say, was that one of your favourite things about that role?
Yes, yeah. Like seeing the difference that you can make, and it's sometimes quite a significant difference as well.
What about then, if that was one of your best bits of it, is there a worse bit of that role?
No, I loved it. I absolutely loved all of it, part and parcel. Yeah.
Brilliant. You can see you're really passionate about it still.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, hugely. Yeah.
Do you have any particular cases from that time that really stand out, that stayed with you?
Not really. I suppose, like I say, sometimes the traumatic incidences sort of stay with you, but not necessarily like the person. Sometimes just, like the trauma of the incident, not necessarily the person of it. And I think on reflection, like, you can't allow too much in, because if you did, you'd be traumatized as well.
Yeah, we often say that, don't we, Dee?
Yeah, you have to have that level of detachment, don't you?
Yep. Yeah.
Healthy detachment.
Exactly. And like my mentor said, and I say it to my students now, but because they ask the same questions, but they're like, how do you cope with it? And my mentor basically said to me, like, it's not your grief. You don't need to grieve. It's not your grief. Don't take it away from the family.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a nice way of looking at it, I think, as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've talked about your work as an embalmer there. What was your next steps then in your career? Where did you go from there?
So from there, I had to have back surgery, which kind of put paid to my career, really, in 2011, and which is when I decided that I was going to go to university while I was healing. And I kind of thought, what do I really want to do? And so I ended up doing my undergrad in forensic investigation, sort of going back again to that sort of beginning of what jobs I should do. And that's kind of where I thought it was, because really, as an embalmer, what job does that get you in the real world? It doesn't sort of transfer over, does it? Unless I want to be like a hitman or a serial killer, maybe.
I mean, from your school aptitude test, I think.
Yeah, I think they could tie in there. I had a little chuckle when you said about your back surgery there, because that's both of you that after major surgery have thought, you know what, I'm not going to sit about and rest. I'm going to go back to university in that time.
Yeah, bit
Both
bonkers.
of you.
I think you've got to be a bit bonkers to work in this industry, haven't you? So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
after I had my hip replaced, I went back to uni and did my masters. Hobbled into my first lectures on crutches, and my lecturer, who'd been my undergrad dissertation tutor, was like, "What are you doing here? Come see it."
I'm like recovering.
Yeah, because you go
Recovering
bored.
and learning.
You go a bit mental otherwise, wouldn't you? You get bored.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, of course, so you had your back surgery in 2011, but we
Mhm,
met you in 2014 when we were
mhm.
working together on an air disaster.
Yep.
So you are as well a disaster response consultant. And at the time, we were still crime scene investigation. No, we just left crime scene investigation, hadn't we? But you were
Yes.
really interested in it at that point, weren't you? So you were like getting information from
Yep.
us. But you were still embalming at the time.
Yes. Yep.
And that's what you were doing out on that disaster. You were part of the embalming team initially. What made you move over into disaster response? How did you get into that field?
That kind of came from the embalming situation, really. So I'd met people that had done disaster response, and they basically said, like, would you like to join the team? Your skill set fits in. And so I was like, oh, yay, let's add another string to your bow, and do that. And like the team that you deploy is so diverse, it's lovely.
It is, isn't
Um,
it?
like,
Very.
you always want to pick somebody's brains because of all the skill sets that are there.
I think the broad range of people when you deploy to an international disaster is amazing. I think that's one of the best things about it personally. The people that you get to meet from all over the world, and the amount of people that you get to work with, and the different skills that everybody brings is just amazing.
And they're always willing to share their knowledge. That's what I love about it. Like every
Yeah.
single one of them will share that their passion and their knowledge, because we all have the same end goal, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Julie, we've talked about now your embalming and then your disaster response and you're going back to university. What was your next steps from there?
So in 2016, and actually it was you that shared the job application.
I
Um,
did.
Kent Police were looking for crime scene investigators, and I basically applied and got the position. So I felt very fortunate, because it is always a position that lots of people apply for. And yeah, in the September, I started work as a crime scene investigator.
It's quite a difficult field to get into. And I think 2016 there was a lot more women in it, but back when we started in the earlier 2000s, that again was another male-dominated industry, and I think the wave of that started to turn happened probably in about 2008, 2009. Did you find that was it still quite male-dominated down south, or lots of?
No, yeah, very female dominated. Yeah.
It's interesting the change, isn't it? There has been a large shift and there is a lot more. It's probably more female dominated now. It's been a complete switch round, really.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes boils down to shift work. So it's a little bit more flexible if you've got children.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's true.
So you started as a CSI in the September. What sort of training did you do when you came in to the field?
So Kent Police have their training headquarters at Maidstone. So I went there for, I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks period, and basically went back to basics. Although I'd done my undergraduate, so I had that knowledge. It was just them teaching me about how to fill in their paperwork, how to complete examinations, how to use the cameras. So an intensive sort of 6 weeks. And then I went on area for 2 weeks. That was my first 2 weeks on area. That was just in the run up to Christmas. And then I went back to training school for the level 2, so for major crime straight away. afterwards and did that. Although I think it's changed slightly now, and I think you go on area for a year and then go back and do your level 2 training.
Yeah, a lot of people now, I think, it varies from force to force, but I think have to complete a portfolio and have to attend so many volume crime scenes before they can go up to that tier 2 level. So you went straight into tier 2.
Yes, yeah.
That's really interesting. And how did you find that?
Nice.
I think I was lucky because of my background. So, I'd had a phenomenal amount of experience, because at this stage I was in my 30s. So I was sort of quite late coming into the CSI world, really. But yeah, a lot of my sort of the embalming world plus the disaster victim identification transferred across. So
Yeah,
I didn't really struggle like too much with some of the major crime.
excellent. And did you prefer volume crime to major crime, or did you like both for different reasons?
Both for different reasons. And I know a lot of people say they don't like major crime because the amount of exhibits and the amount of paperwork that sort of comes with it. But I actually really like major crime because you have an exhibits officer, so you just hand your exhibits over. Whereas
Yeah.
at volume crime, like, you're responsible for doing something with them and putting them into property and logging them, and so at major crime it's just like, oh yes, they're yours now, you have
There you
them.
go. Yeah. That's
But
very true, actually.
like in major crime, I liked when you worked with a bigger variety of people, so a bigger team, and sometimes that was out of agency, not necessarily just like Kent Police. It might have been the National Crime Agency, it might have been Border Force. So you kind of had that extra added element of, again, those skill sets within that team, rather than kind of just working on your own. Because probably like you guys, as a volume crime scene investigator, you worked on your own,
Yeah.
and it can be quite lonely.
It
It
can get
can,
quite
can't it?
lonely, can't it? You've got to be a certain kind of person, I guess,
Yes, yeah.
to be able to work on your own, think outside your box, prioritize your own workload, and just keep trucking, really, because you don't have the same level of team support. You can phone the office or you can phone somebody, but it's not quite the same, is it, as working in that major crime setting?
No, no. So yeah, the balance of the two. I mean, I loved helping people. I loved meeting the victims, and I always used to be like, I'm sorry to have to meet you in these circumstances, but actually like helping those. And sometimes you'd go to locations that you wouldn't even know existed.
Yes.
You'd be going out like
Yeah.
quite rural sometimes, and you'd be like, I didn't even know this place existed. And plus, rural, they usually have animals. There's usually animals at scenes then, and I'm like,
That's
yes.
true. I think we talked in an earlier episode about me casting footwear marking cow shit.
Yeah. I think the animal ones are interesting. As an animal lover, you love them, and you get dead excited when you see them in a scene, but not so much when they're trotting around inside of your scene.
No, especially if it's a duck. Yeah.
Oh, you had a
Pet
duck in a
duck.
scene.
Yes.
Brilliant.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, they had a pet duck. We named him Bob in the end. Yeah.
So it was a pet duck, so did he live indoors?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh
Brilliant.
wow.
Oh, Dee
And
loves
that's one of the
ducks.
other. I love that. I would have got so excited going into a house and seeing a duck in there. Yeah, I just need to take this back with me.
Yeah.
Bob is now evidence.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing, isn't it? You see such a variety of weird and wonderful things going into people's homes and things
Hmm.
like that as a CSI, isn't it?
And they're so open with you, aren't they? They're just like, oh, do you want do you want to come and have a look at this? It's not part of your scene, but it's like, you're like, wow, that's like really cool. And they're like, oh, look, come and have a look. Have a nice coffee. And I'm like, oh, yes.
Okay. Did you ever get offered food?
Yes. And they were very upset if you refused it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was
What?
like, I don't have time.
Bacon sandwiches we used to get offered quite a bit.
Yeah.
Especially
that's
first thing in
why,
the morning. When you're out at
yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning. Do you like a bacon sandwich? Do you like a cup of tea? You think, yeah, I'd love one, but I don't actually have time. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about like toilet breaks. So if I have a cup of tea at every house, it's like, well,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes. And public toilets sometimes aren't you don't really want to be visiting them, do you?
no.
Definitely not. What's the weirdest place you ever found yourself in?
Apart from like muddy holes in the middle of fields,
Oh.
We
which
know
I
some
kind
weird
kind of
place.
kind of guess is normal really for a CSI, isn't it? You know.
You do find yourself in all kinds of weird and wonderful places, don't you? And we've talked about it. So yeah, I was wondering if you had any off the top of your head.
No,
I mean,
I
like
don't.
say
I
muddy
think.
holes.
Yeah, like not that I can. Not that's probably weird to me.
That's probably
Yeah,
what it is. We're asking you the question. You're like, it's not weird.
that's what we said as well, wasn't it? That although you visit some weird places, it becomes part and parcel of your job, so it doesn't stick in your mind, these
No.
random things that you do.
One of the best ones. I had to go down to the port of Dover for the crime agency and go onto a boat. I didn't realise just how big cargo ships are.
Oh,
Like they are like huge, and they were like,
huge.
"Oh, can you just walk up the like this side of this wobbly little rope plank thing?" Like, and I'm like, "Okay, fine." Like hard hat on, like cases in hand and camera, like
Oh
walking up
no.
this little like what was like a little gangplank rope thingy. So I'm
Oh
walking
my
up,
goodness.
which is fine, but of course, the longer you're on there, as you start to come out, the tide goes out. And when you come down, it was at a completely different angle. And I was just like, oh, I'm not so sure that I'm like confident, like coming down that now.
Give somebody else your
Especially with all
case.
your kit.
And
Like,
the hard
I'll
hat
go,
was
you have that.
wobbly, right? It was wobbly. And I was just thinking, it's going to end up in the sea. Like, it's just going to end up like over the side. This is like 4:30 in the morning. And I'm just like, I just want to go home now.
Half on the one. Please tell me you didn't have to examine the entire cargo ship.
No, it was just some drugs. I say just some drugs had been found on board. So, and their crime scene investigator was up in the Midlands, and so they asked if they
Uh-huh.
could borrow a Kent CSI, and that was me because I was on call. So yeah.
4 in the morning, walking up the side of a cargo ship. I think you've
Thinking,
just
how did I
described the
get
job
here?
beautifully.
Definitely with that one.
I think I really should be in bed right now. So, was being a crime scene investigator everything that you hoped?
Yes, I loved it. Absolutely loved it, and that's what I always tell the students. Like, if you've got an inkling that you want to be one or a passion that you want to go and do it, it is one of the best jobs in the world. Like,
It is.
absolutely.
Ooh, so would you say embalming or CSIing?
CSI.
CSI, really?
Yeah.
Now I feel like a
Ooh.
traitor.
We'll edit that bit out if you want.
Because it
It's
was the variety. It was so varied, and I always say like I felt like I was lucky in my career, but I guess we kind of make our own luck in this world. I got involved in lots of different things, lots of major crimes because I was so passionate and because I loved it, and because I would go and speak to my patrol sergeants and go into briefings and made myself available. They knew that they could rely on me.
yeah,
Um, and
Yeah.
so I would often get called for jobs that I necessarily might not have done.
brilliant. That's what it's about, isn't it? Building those relationships and showing your passion and turning up. And if you're called out, saying yes, because some people do not want that call.
Won't do it.
No,
Yeah.
Or if there's overtime there, yes. Like
yeah,
I remember I would chomp the hands off, and it was never about the money. It was always about the experience. I mean, the
yeah,
money
Yeah.
was always good to have, but no, it was always about the experience and getting as much experience as possible.
Yeah. It it sounds like throughout your career you've been really good at pushing yourself forward from being that 15-year-old going through the yellow pages and writing to everyone to then getting yourself in briefings and approaching people. And like we said, even on the disasters, speaking to people about their experience and tunneling into that as well. So yeah, you've been really good at getting yourself out there.
My own little cheerleader.
You have to be.
You certainly do, yeah.
You really do
Yeah,
in this world. If you can't do it for yourself,
yeah.
it is the best way to be. Brilliant.
I had
love
some
that,
really good
Julie.
I had some really good managers as well, though, to be fair, that that were quite supportive. So uh, Charlotte Thorpe, I'm going to give her a shout out because I think you should get her on. She was a great mentor and a great manager for me. She wasn't necessarily my direct line manager, but yeah, she was wonderful. So a shout out to Charlotte.
A good manager can make such a difference. The difference between a good manager and a bad
Huge.
manager, can't it? It really can. When I first went into my role as a CSI, my first few months, I had a not a very good manager at all. And it was so bad to the point where I wondered if I wanted to continue doing the job, bearing in mind that I'd been wanting to do this job since I was about 15 and 16. Hadn't been able to get in, much like you, Julie, because I think we're about the same age, because it was policing at the time. I had my disability, and then I went all around the houses to try and get back in, went back to uni, finally got the job, and then it was just awful. But after that 3 months, fortunately, I got moved over to a different manager who was amazing. He was so good with me, and it made such a difference that I just flourished. I became an excellent scene investigator. I don't mind saying myself. Getting me a cheerleader. No, but
Yeah,
I did. I flourished. My skills improved. Everything improved, and I became much more confident. Whereas I'd had my confidence knocked, and my
yeah,
belief was kind of slowly being chipped away at, my own self-belief. Whereas moving over to a good manager, I was nurtured, and it was just absolutely brilliant. And I fell back in love, and I was so happy to be there all the time. And
yeah.
like you, I really loved the job. I was really passionate about it, put myself forward for as much as possible, and it was
It
just
makes a
brilliant.
huge difference. One person can make a huge difference.
It's so true.
Can.
So as a crime scene investigator, is there any one job that sticks out for you?
I think not necessarily sticks out, but probably one of the most memorable is always going to be that the first call that you get to say, "Do you want to come to a murder?"
Yes. You don't forget that, do you?
No, no, not at all. And and again, it's awful when you use the term fortunate or lucky, and that was very early on in my career. So in 2017, in the July, my boss phoned and said, "We've got a CSI there. However, do you want to take the lead for your first murder?"
Ooh,
And so I was like, "Yes."
of course.
Of course, yeah, naturally. And then, of course, the adrenaline kicks in, doesn't it? Naturally. Like, what is it going to be? What's going to be there? Who's going to be there? What's going to have happened? Um, and it literally, thankfully, was literally a stone's throw from the police station as well. So,
Well,
really
That's a
that's not
handy
lucky.
too
one.
bad. Yeah. You know, it's funny because we often use the words enjoy or lucky or fortunate. And then I think sometimes we catch ourselves saying them and then try to pull back from using them. But if you're going to do this job, you have to enjoy parts. You've got to enjoy it. I think that you can recognize the darker side
Hmm.
and the difficult side. And I think that you can have empathy for those that are involved in awful crimes and for victims. But you have got to have a passion and enjoy it, haven't you? And for us,
Yep.
it's like murder.
Yep.
Yes, I'm in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like it's our normal, isn't it? And this is what I say to people. It's like it's my normal. Like my entire career has been around the death industry, but that's my normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see dead people?
No.
At different points daily. En masse. Have you ever had any creepy incidents where you felt something weird or someone's chatted in your
Never.
ear or really?
Yep.
That's
Absolutely, because
interesting.
everybody always kind of says that, oh, you must have, and I'm like, I don't disbelieve, but I've never had an experience to make me believe.
That's fair
So
enough.
Fair enough, yeah.
yeah,
Um, so your very first murder that you were called to, would you be
yes,
willing to talk us and our listeners through that, please?
I certainly can. So another shout out as well. So Lee Crosby was the CSI that was there at the scene. He was like my mentor. He'd been a CSI for many years. And he was very good. He sort of was the first one. He was the one that spotted that actually this wasn't right, because initially the police had said like, oh, we think it's decomposed. We think there's some decomposition. And
Okay.
Lee was basically like, yeah, no, that's not what that is. It doesn't look right. And he was the one who actually called it and said, I think we all need to retreat and sort of have a discussion.
And this is why you need crime
Wow.
scene investigators assessing the scenes.
Yes.
Good shout.
So he had taken like his initial photos, but obviously he then said like, look, retake for your photos as well, because obviously I've only just taken what is our initial sort of scene photos when we get called to deceased, and we started with those, and he just kind of guided me through the process really. So yeah, ever so grateful. And we had at this particular one, there was a lot of blood spatter, so we actually had a scientist come to the scene as well, so it was a really good scene for like my first scene. I learned so much from this blood spatter guy, and I saw him regularly through my career. He's like, "It's you again?" I'm like, "Yes, me
Here I
again."
am. But again,
But
you get to know people and build up those relationships, don't you? And
yeah,
the blood pattern analysts are amazing, I think. I used to
yeah.
love working with them.
And because he was regular, I knew how he worked, he knew how I worked. So we ended
Handy.
up like just knowing. So the initial sort of blood spatter was in the garden, and the victim had been found on a sofa in one of the bedrooms. It was a house of like multiple occupancy. And so and we could see sort of like the spatter down the stairs, and there was a handprint in blood. So it was like a sort of, like I say, almost like perfect first murder scene, so to speak. I think Lee was grateful because I was the one that was seizing all the exhibits, obviously. So he
Obviously.
he was just like, well, this is yours. You get to do all the paperwork.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
But like I say, it was handy because it was literally not even 5 minutes from the police station. So it was easy to sort of go to and fro. And obviously, you guys know that sometimes your scenes are in the middle of nowhere
Nowhere.
with no facilities, and it can be like a complete disaster.
And you can be stuck there for hours,
Yes.
desperate for the
Yeah.
toilet, sweating in
Yep.
your suit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Making
Been
it sound
there.
really glamorous.
One thing this
Such a
job
glamorous
is
role.
not.
Right, that's the reality of it, isn't it? And so yeah, and there was a conviction. 2 people were convicted of this man's murder, and it was nice to sort of, for you, I don't know about you guys, but I went to the scene, and then went to the post-mortem as well, so I did both.
Did you? Was there a period of time between each?
Yes. Yep.
Because we used to have it where if one team was at the scene, we'd try and put another team in at post-mortem, unless we had quite a period in between, obviously, because, for contamination issues. So that
Yep.
was really lucky. I'm using that word lucky again. Lucky to
Yeah.
get to do
I
both
mean,
scene and post-mortem.
I don't think you would do that so much now with the ISO accreditation and the forensic science
No.
regulator. But yeah, back then, it was the victim was left in the scene while you were working, and then eventually
Yes.
was removed and taken to the hospital. And again, we know there's a chronic shortage of pathologists, so
Yeah.
there can sometimes be a delay. There has been some scenes where literally the body's been taken and the post-mortem is being done while I'm at the scene. So
Wow.
Yeah. It just
Yeah.
depends
yeah,
on
very much so.
availability.
Yeah.
and resources at the time and capacity.
Yep.
It all
Yeah.
plays a part. I don't think people realise how many
No.
ducks need lining up to get these things done.
Yeah.
It's huge
Exactly.
effort, isn't it?
So what had actually happened in this case? Obviously, you had somebody murdered.
So there'd been a lot of drink involved. Obviously in July, so it was a nice sunny day. They were out in the garden. I think an argument had obviously ensued, and this guy had ended up on the floor, and they'd kicked him while he was down.
Oh.
Hence why there was the spatter up the garden wall and the furniture. We don't believe that he died there. We think that he either was carried or sort of half moved, half carried, sort of down, because it was in a basement, so down into the living room. We believe that he was on that sofa for a while because there was a lot of blood staining that had obviously been tried to be cleared up as well, and then been moved and laid out on another sofa further into the basement.
So they kicked him,
Yep.
not quite to death, but to
Almost,
cause a
yep.
lot of
Significant
bleeding,
Yep.
significant injury.
Yep.
And then moved him several times.
Yeah. Which is
left him
why,
die.
yep. Which is why I think
Wow.
the police thought it was decomposition, because the swollen and the bruising, and so they
Yeah.
made those conclusions that that's what they thought it was.
Yeah, because I suppose with swelling and bruising and the different colours you get, and then a lot of blood around it,
Yep.
could start to look a little like decomposition. It could be easily misunderstood, I guess, if you don't know what you're looking at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really brutal, isn't it, though?
Mm-hmm. They were all known to each other, so they were all a friendship group. So so they were all known, and obviously, like you guys know, it's actually very rare that a stranger will murder you. It's
Yes.
usually
Yes.
somebody that's linked to you or known to you in some capacity. So yeah, it was a friendship group, which makes it even sadder.
It is very sad that.
But like you say, stranger murders are quite rare, so they're also quite exciting. But drink and drugs
And sunshine.
and sunshine,
It's
yeah,
always
that's
with the
true, actually.
sunshine.
Summer bank
Yeah.
holidays,
Oh.
no, you don't want to be on call. Summer bank holidays,
No,
No.
you're going to a serious assault at least
once
Yeah.
or
usually
twice.
once
Yeah.
or twice. Yeah,
Yeah. Or the day after the bank holiday.
Yes.
Like, you're walking into a lot those days,
Yeah.
don't you?
Carnage.
Yeah, definitely.
you just think, oh, what could be said to trigger somebody to kick them to death?
Yep. And especially often when in those sorts of incidences, and we see it more so now because there's much more CCTV, when somebody's on the floor, they don't have the capacity to defend themselves.
No. Yeah.
No, that's the sad thing, isn't it?
That sounds like such a big scene for you as well. So you've started in the garden, you've
Yep.
got a sitting room,
Yep.
stairs, and a basement. Like, that's a large area to cover
Yep.
within. So how long did you end up at the scene?
Oh, couple of days. Yep. Without a shadow of
Easy.
a doubt. Yep. Going sort of to and fro. So we obviously had to wait for the scientists to come down as well. So we and then we had to sort of cover that over, because although it was the summer, we were like, well, what if it rains?
Well,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We
We are
are
in
the good old
England,
British
yeah.
weather.
Yeah. So we were trying to sort of fathom this makeshift like cover, and there was a cat in that scene that I had to get the RSPCA out to as well.
Oh,
So
Oh.
I'm surprised
Yeah,
you didn't end up taking it, Julie.
I got them to rescue it. So yeah, I was like, I'm happy to feed it and water it while I'm here, but there's going to come a point where the building's shut up, and so the cat needs rescuing. So yeah, it was a very, very big first scene, but very
It sounds
interesting.
it.
But then, did you see a lot more of that then, do you think, where friends are getting drunk together, taking drugs together, beating each other?
Yes. Yep. Or
Yeah.
even sort of partners as well. So what we call like domestic murders. Lots of those sorts of incidences, and often around significant times of the year. I think it puts that added pressure on people.
Yeah.
And my one of my bosses, Charlotte, again, she always used to say to me, if you're on call, I know there's going to be trouble.
Did you bring it?
I was like that magnet. You could guarantee if I was on call that I would 9 times out of 10 get called out to something.
Really? Wow.
And they were like, I'm sick and tired of seeing your name on the overnight sheet. And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do.
There's often a CSI that gets tagged with that. I was quite lucky, I have to say. You didn't you, when you first started as well? You used to get body after body for identification, didn't you? People didn't want to work with Dion.
Yeah, I had quite a lot. I'd come in and they'd be like, knew you were coming in on your first shift. 'Cause there was quite often there was a unidentified body to go and do like the fingerprints and things for in the mortuary.
Yep.
So yeah, I had a lot of those.
Yep.
I didn't get called out so much. Mine was always kept on.
Kept on, yeah, I get kept on more.
Never got home on time.
No.
Like you say, particularly if it was sunny weekends,
Yep.
they were the worst, or bank holidays, like you say
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember a stabbing that we went to together, Dee. We were on duty on the back shift, so it was just the two of us. There wasn't much doing, and this job came in, so we said we'll go trundle down to it together and have a look. And that was Friends. Do you remember? It was in a flat in Sunderland, and
Yeah.
again, that wasn't too far away from the police station. The victim didn't die, so it was just a serious assault. But effectively, it was two lads and a lass that'd been out together, allegedly having a great night, and then they'd ordered pizza. Wasn't it over pizza?
It was something like that, yeah.
I think it was over the girl and pizza that these two lads ended up fighting, and then one of them took a knife out and just stabbed, and we're like, bloody hell. And then he hid the knife, but
it
we
was
found
in the scene.
It was, wasn't it?
Under the pizza.
Well, Julie, it was a small flat, okay? So you had the bedroom, then you had a small hallway, then you had the bathroom opposite, and then you walked a little bit down this short corridor, and then there was the like front room kitchen. So it was not large at all. And in the bedroom, the guy had a bucket where he was pissing and throwing his cigarette butts. So there was a full bucket of piss and cigarette butts, bearing in mind that the toilet was literally across a short corridor. You'd be lucky if it was 4 or 5 steps, and it stunk, didn't it?
It was full to the brim with all of just these cigarettes floating in the top of it. Horrid.
Oh, they're so dirty.
Well, I photographed it and I included it in my photographs for court. My supervisor said, "What's this for?" And I said, "Context."
Right? That's what I'm forever telling the students, the context. And what's the context of it?
Context, yeah. But it was like, there was a lot of blood and clots at that scene, wasn't there? And we weren't bothered by that at all. But this bucket, it was like, that's too far.
Yeah. Isn't it fascinating though, when you go to scene and there is a lot of blood? I often think, how did somebody survive this? How is somebody still alive from this?
Yeah.
Because some are absolute bloodbaths, aren't they?
They really are. There's just blood everywhere, and you think nobody can survive losing this amount of blood.
Yep.
Do you often find, though, it's the people that are repeatedly known and in trouble that survive?
Yes. Yeah.
That happens quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yes. It's the innocents, isn't it, that get caught up along the way.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you found that as well, because we've talked about that a few times, and then you think, just a bit.
Am I just biased?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to know that you found the same, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad. Like, went somewhere, there's been car accidents, for example, usually where the car's been stolen and it's been in getaway. And there's one that always sticks in my mind, and the engine was like, it was on the driver's seat.
Wow.
But this guy, he got
Walked away.
out. He ran away because the police were in pursuit of him. And when they actually caught him, he had a handful of scratches and bruises, like nothing broken. He was fine, but I
Yeah.
was like, if
How?
that was just a normal person going down the street from that, like they wouldn't survive it,
Probably
would
die.
they? Yeah.
It is odd, like really odd when there's instances like that.
I couldn't believe that. I'll never get that image of that engine on that seat thinking, how on earth has somebody walked away from this? Unbelievable.
It really is. Speaking of friends hurting friends, didn't you go to one day where somebody had bit the mate's ear off?
Oh yeah, common
I had
practice that is,
several
isn't
of
it?
those,
Yeah.
lots. Yeah. Again, those sunny bank holidays, people get tasty for ears, apparently.
Yep.
So weird, isn't it?
Remind me not to wear that perfume.
Yeah. Like, coming at you. You do see some strange things, don't you?
But
You
like I
really
say,
do.
it becomes your normal. But when you meet somebody that's not been in the world, and you might, you sort of start talking, and they're like, "Huh?" And you're like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like that's just normal. That's just my life. That's just normal."
Yeah.
Yeah, crime scene investigators do make interesting dinner guests. If the rest of the table has a stomach for it, that is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
I was going to say, many people don't want this conversation whilst there's food in front of them.
No.
No. So how long were you in crime scene investigation for, Julie?
So I did 6 years. Yeah,
6 years.
6 years. Yeah.
It's quite a long time, isn't it, when you work in shifts for that long? It's a lot of crime scenes.
Yeah, shifts. And like I say, I was just lucky, fortunate, unlucky, call outs and the added extra. But I was 110, more than probably like 100% dedicated. Whatever was asked, I was, yep, 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 because I just did love it. And like I say, it got me into those jobs that I wouldn't necessarily have been fortunate enough to work on. So yeah.
And now you're a forensic investigation lecturer at a
Yeah.
university, so you're passing all of your experience and knowledge onto the next generations, which is amazing. Can I ask why you decided to leave scene investigation?
It was kind of twofold really. One, I was getting older and I thought in 10 years time when I'm in my mid-50s, do I want to be called out and working 20-hour days and doing shifts and all of those things that come with it?
Walking up the side of gangplank
Yeah,
cargo
basically,
ships at
like
1:30 in the morning.
standing in a muddy hole in the middle of February. And I kind of thought probably not. And sort of the culture had become, not as nice as I maybe would have liked it to have been. So I kind of think it was a bit of a twofold thing, and I mean it was bittersweet. The decision was kind of bittersweet to be leaving, and it wasn't an easy decision, and there was many tears shed.
Yeah.
But I just felt that the time was right, and also like passing that knowledge on to the next generation and hopefully inspiring them and filling them with passion to go on and do the job.
We've been doing training and events since we left scene investigation, and we absolutely love sharing our knowledge and experience because we're still really passionate about it. We still miss it. I think it's one of the reasons we decided to do the disaster response stuff so we could still do some field work and still keep a practical hand in. And I don't think you realise the impact that you have as a practitioner sharing your knowledge and experience until a few years later. Like, we literally got a note from someone that we taught 10 years ago saying that they'd remembered those lectures and loved them, and we were blown away, weren't we? We were like, no way. We were absolutely over the moon. But I think that it's the realities that you can bring to your teaching, and this is no offense to academics. There are a lot of amazing academics, but I don't think academics can deliver in a practical subject in the same way as a practitioner can. That's my personal view.
I mean, it's authentic practice, isn't it? And so that's what you bring to the table. And the students do say they can tell the difference between somebody that's practiced and somebody that hasn't. So particularly for those practical scenes that come with their assessments. It isn't just all about the theory. Yes, you have to understand the theory, but you have to put that into practice. And if
Yeah.
you've not done that yourself, how do you convert that over?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't think you take that same level of passion into it either. Like, as you're talking, we can tell you're passionate about it and your love for the field. And I think that's much harder to translate from someone who hasn't actually worked in that industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, I think you get to teach the theory and the way that it should be done. But then also you've got so many examples of how it doesn't always work, and you've got to think outside the box and be flexible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And then when your students go on to get careers in the field, that's I've just recently had one that's got a job in Kent Police, like
Brilliant.
one of my students that graduated last year, and she's going to be amazing. I know she's going to be amazing. But and she's so sweet. She's just like, but without you, there's no way that I would have been able to get into the job role that she was really passionate about. So if I can make a difference to just one person during my teaching career, then that's
So
what it's all
rewarding.
about. Yeah.
That's
Do you miss
amazing.
it? It's lovely, isn't it? Really rewarding. Do you miss scene investigation?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Probably
Yes,
like you guys. So like yes and no. Having been an academic now for 3 years, could I go back to shift work? Reality, probably not. Would I want to? Sometimes yes. When I've still got friends in the industry and stuff like that, you think, actually, should I? I mean, in 2019 I undertook a master's. 19 and 20 I decided I was going to go back to education again.
just keep pushing yourself.
Oh, the perpetual learner.
Yeah.
And that is because I met an anthropologist on one of the disaster response jobs that we did. And actually that their passion followed through to mine, and so I did my master's, and so I kind of hope that I can keep my hand in, maybe necessarily in a different way sort of now, rather than crime scene investigation. I'm really fortunate. I work with some really good colleagues here. I've just had a paper agreed for publication, which if you'd have said to me 10 years ago, like, this is where I'd be like, definitely not in education, and definitely not having an article published in a million years.
That's fantastic.
So, congratulations on getting your first paper as well. Big achievement.
Yeah, you masters, published author. A lot's changed since we met you in 2014.
I know, right?
For all of us, actually.
Yeah,
for all of us. I suppose then, to finish us off, do you remember your very last job or your last murder?
I do. My last job, yes. So it was a double murder, was my last job.
You got a double murder for your last job?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
What a one to go out on.
I know, like the big bang, so to speak. So
going out in glory.
Yeah. And that literally was because I picked the phone up, and my boss said, can you come to here on this day? And I was like, yeah. Like, it was very much we all had to sign non-disclosures for this particular incident, so it was very much didn't know what the scene was, what was happening until you got there. I had to sign the non-disclosure, and I ended up being seconded there for 6-7 weeks.
Ooh, 7 weeks. That's a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, a very long time.
Can you tell us anything about the circumstances?
I can, because it has been in the press, and the guy has been convicted. And it was, what was really interesting about it was that technically one was bodiless. So, although he received a conviction for the double murders.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's
that
really
is interesting.
Yeah, and it crossed over into Sussex as well. So it was cross-bordered.
Cross-border.
Yeah. So it was a big a big investigation with lots of people involved. So he had burnt the victim, in an oil drum, and so the remains were very, very, very fragmented.
Had they been killed first and then
Well,
burnt, or do we
he
know?
he said that there was an accident and she fell and hit her head and died, and then
Okay.
he then panicked and put her in an oil drum and burnt her.
As you do.
Right, rather than phone the police and say there's
Been
been
an
an accident.
accident.
And then it sort of, as they were investigating this incident, because she was reported missing, her family reported her missing. There was another victim who had been missing for 6 months prior that was linked to him that nobody had missed, which is really sad.
That is
So
sad.
there had been no reports of her being missing, but she was then linked to the location, but sadly she was never identified. So the second victim, she was identified by a tooth. So we worked with an odontologist who was amazing, I have to say. So
wow.
One tooth.
One tooth.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Did they do that from post-mortem antemortem data, or did they manage to extract DNA?
No DNA. So
No
it
DNA.
was the roots of the tooth. So he had obviously the X-rays, and there was a particular photo of her smiling.
Okay.
Yeah, so like a combination of the two. But he was phenomenal. When he put his package together for court, he was like, "Can you have a look at it for me?" So it's like that a lay person would understand.
Yes.
So yeah, he was absolutely brilliant.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I don't think people realise, the identifications that can be made sometimes from just small pieces of remains, like from one tooth. That's pretty incredible.
Yep.
It is
Yeah.
amazing, that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But it was, all I'm going to say, it was outside in December
Oof.
with lots of wet mud.
Oh. Oh, yeah. That doesn't sound like a pleasant scene to work. Interesting, but not
Interesting,
pleasant.
and then, however, once it came to court and obviously the conviction came through, so very rewarding to know that you've been part of that.
Yeah.
I have to say, December outside in mud, I do not miss. Mud, rain, snow.
And it was all, again, it was always those scenes that came in the winter, wasn't it? In the woods, in the middle of nowhere, like you're just like, really?
Yeah.
And my this is how unlucky or unlucky it was. My parting gift to you is, so that December I'd worked on that case like non-stop. I went back on area for about 2 days, and I was on call for one of them, and I got a double call out.
No way.
Oh, you are kidding. You really are queen of the call outs, Julie.
A shit magnet, some would say. Dare we ask what those double call outs were?
They were 2 deaths. They were, yeah, they were 2 deaths.
No.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
Julie.
Wow.
What a way to leave the job.
Yeah. I wonder if things have quietened down for your colleagues now you've left.
Yeah, probably. Everything's so much quieter around these parts. Mind with the ISO standards, things are so much quieter for everyone, aren't they?
Yes, that's a whole nother podcast.
That is a full podcast in itself, to be fair, isn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julie. It's been amazing chatting to you, as always. You've been a brilliant guest, and yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and taking the time out of your day to chat with us and share your experience and stories with our listeners. So thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Julie. So thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you in another 2 weeks where we will take you back under the barrier tape.